I feel like my first thoughts when I was exposed to, transgender people and, transgenderism, transness in general really is kind of like that's cool. That's other people. That's not me. I just didn't think it was a thing. I didn't think it was, it applied to me. I didn't think that I would be transgender. And I think part of that is I feel like the trans narratives and like the types of trans people we see portrayed in media, it's all, kind of like they have known that they're trans since birth, or like early childhood. And as far as they've lived, their lives have always been like that, Are there any instances where I feel like I could see myself represented in media as a trans person? I don't know that I would say so. Because like I said earlier, a lot of the depictions of trans people that you see in media, with the exception of honestly a few, are these young, cispath or cis-assumed or passing trans women who are attractive, and I never really felt like they look like me. In the relatively brief stint that I've had this experience, relative to the rest of my life, I never felt like any of those people represented me. While you certainly have trans people represented, it feels usually like a very sanitized version of trans people, a version of trans people that is accessible to and approachable to cis people. And I've had trouble with that because, I've heard people, I feel like it sets an expectation for people like me who this is a more recent, experience for, or aren't totally along the way in their transition, or aren't cis assumed or passing, or, I feel like it sets an expectation to be that depiction of trans people that you see on TV. And I've struggled with it. I've heard, people make comments about things in the bathroom, and I'm sure those same people also probably love Euphoria and stuff, but I feel like I really haven't seen myself a lot, but also I'm just bad at watching things. I haven't seen a lot, which I still think says something about trans representation. I don't feel like I should have to seek out specific shows that center trans narratives to see trans people on TV. But I'm aware of the field. I read things online. I've seen Disclosure, the whole shebang. So I know how we're portrayed. And I think, until some recent examples, it rarely feels well-intentioned or nuanced or accurate or positive. There's a phrase I heard ages ago called mental self-harm, where you just intentionally expose yourself to transphobic kind of content and material. I mean, it doesn't obviously have to be it's a very broad phrase, but in this context, transphobic stuff on online, or not even online, just anywhere. And obviously, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's harmful. It's not stuff that you want to see. So I aim to just not expose myself to it at all. I stay away. That's one of the reasons I probably haven't seen as much as I maybe should when talking about this discussion, because like I said before, just in conversation about film and media with negative portrayals of trans people, it's why do I need to expose myself to this? I don't have to. Why should I? So, in terms of changes that I want to see in the media moving forward, in terms of how trans people are represented, transness is portrayed, I feel like too often we see narratives that center trans suffering. even in work that generally has like better representation of trans people, this is the narrative that they live. And it makes me wonder like who it's really being made for, because trans people, we know this stuff already. We know life is hard for us, and life has been hard for us in the past. We don't only want to be able to see trans people in the context of suffering. The thing about portraying us suffering in order for like cis people empathy points is that we suffer enough already. If seeing it happen in real life isn't going to change things, then I don't know that seeing it on TV is going to do much either. I think, cis people, if they want to educate themselves, it shouldn't be at the expense of trans people. What I do want to see in media about trans people is I want to see less trans suffering. I want to see more trans joy. I want to see narratives which center trans joy and celebrate trans people and trans lives and trans communities and diverse trans bodies. I want to see, the whole shebang. A really nice thing about even shows like Pose, where, like you do have these trans suffering, narratives thrown in, but, you have trans casts and writers and staffers and, all that is, you see, trans media made by trans people about trans people. And so you still have these moments where you do get to see trans people just like authentically like living their lives. And that's a wonderful thing to see alone, right? But so, seeing media by trans people, about trans people, maybe even for trans people, that's what I want to see in media, because I think it definitely creates more accurate and nuanced and authentic portrayals of trans people and gives trans people a more nuanced space to exist within these mediums. And that's just good to see as a trans person. That's great to witness. That's wonderful to watch. And you know what? If cis people want to engage with that and learn from that, they can. But at the end of the day, I really just want to see trans people be put first.